our sense of the world to make sense of the world. Back to Pow Go On, our sense of the world to make sense of the... Oh my god. Speaking of making sense of the world, we can't make sense of the room. What we want to do is put our weight to the front of the spine. Beat up this green screen all of the time. And feel the weight in the front of the shins. Remember, you do not sit on your legs. Please buy me a real green screen. One that is not made out of resistant material made from hell. How are you? Today. Good morning. It is June 14th, Monday. June 14th, Monday. How are you? Are you able to feel the weight of the body down the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all the times? Did you enjoy your weekend? Did you do anything fun? We're running on the usual mornings, getting closer and closer to perfection, but ever so slowly and ever so sillily. How on Monday, June 14th, 2021. This is and will be Herbie with Pow on. Before we continue, I'd like to invite you to place your weight of the body down the front of the spine. Let the weight go wherever it be. Don't be afraid of it. You're placing your weight of the body down the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches. Remember to allow all the words go in one ear and then out the other. That one's for you. And you, and you, and you. Where are you right now? Are you chilling at home on the couch, wherever you are? Are you at the grocery store pushing that cart? Are you with the baby feeding it a tart? God but brain dead simple. God but brain dead simple. It has to be, as in, there has to be an answer to that. If the body is to do anything. So if the body's doing something, it already has that thinking about it. It's already thinking about this God thing. Now, whether or not it's some floating naked bearded man in the sky is a whole nother story. But this God thing is less of a religious thing, less of a spiritual thing, and more of a design thing. This God thing. This human idea of a God. It's not really religious so much as it's religious for that to happen every day. It's not so much as it's religious as it is design. What do you mean God is more of a design and not a religious thing, Herbie? Isn't God a religion kind of thing by nature, Herbie? What do you mean that God is more of a design thing and not a religion thing? What do I mean by that? What do you mean by that, Herbie? Herbie. What do you mean by that? It's not so much that God or religion, not so much that God isn't a religion thing, but rather that religion thing is more of a design thing for human beings. Whatever we do, wherever we live life, we are religious. We act religiously just by nature, just by sheer fact of not being able to see everything in the world at the same time, right? Just by sheer virtue of not being able to see everything at once, you have to act religiously to some extent. You have to act on faith to some extent. You have to act in such a way that even though you don't know the entire picture at the same time, you need to act in such a way that you can produce at least okay results all the time. Now, how do you do that? Well, you create a bunch of system of ideas that apply to the world. And if they're close to the reality of the world, then playing the rules of this game shall get you the rewards, if it says by the game. Now, early on in caveman days, the game was very simple, right? The religion, quote unquote, was just very simple. Was that, okay, the world's out there and there's like beasts, but also food and other mates out there. And so you don't die, you get a mate. And how do you do that? Well, you decide that there are certain things in the world that are true. And so you can operate off of those. Like, you don't go into the den over there because there's like a bunch of animals there. And you don't go into the forest over there at night because a bunch of people died in the past from that. So you act religiously, and usually back then they like put a god over there, right? Because they didn't really understand it. They'd be like, the nature god over there will smite you should you go in past 9 p.m. Or be like, the wolf queen, princess, goddess in that cave is inviting, but no man shall ever return from there. So you act religiously, right? And then, so our religion changed as humans learn more about the world and ourselves. We went from polytheism to monotheism, many gods to the idea of one god. And then eventually right now there's this idea of no god, right? The idea of no god has always been there from the beginning, but it's always combating with whatever is going on at the time. The idea of no gods versus whatever amount of gods is already the current theory. Not too many theories of polytheism are large or in charge around the world. Why is that? Well, because the idea of monotheism might just be more true. What makes it more true? It reasserts itself over time, over and over again. You try to question it. You can go a little bit further, but through time, the truth reasserts itself, and the idea of a singular God just seems to work out. Probably because we have a singular body. So when we relate to a God, we're relating to one person. Our brain wired towards thinking about multiple people. Why would there be polytheism? Probably because you're like, there's a forest over there. That's a forest god, because when you go over there, you never come back. Who does it? Well, there's a forest god. It's not over there. Must be over there. So it's one person over them. Blah, blah. Then the spirit of all things kind of changed that or whatever. So this religion thing, right? We act religiously. So in the culture, for example, if your religion is that you need to be favored by people and that's the utmost priority, then you will act religiously towards things that will gain you favor in that way, that will gain you positive favor in the idea of popularity. which is it's a valid point to come from, right? If you are out in the wild, if you are a caveman, cave woman back in the day, numbers are very important. You got a bunch of tribes together against these wildlife. You need to stay together as a pack to necessarily survive against the wild. So as an individual and as a group, the thing that would make the most sense to keep your group alive would be to have the people who agree together, for people who are agreeable, for people who know how to stick together as a group. So you would necessarily behave in certain ways that would be good for the group and be good for the idea of keeping you with the group. So you might talk about certain relevant things that keep you around with the group. You wouldn't want to talk about things that make you ostracized from the group. You wouldn't want to start fights you wouldn't want to start infighting. So you create rules so that you could act religiously, so that you could have your spirit think more about the day, your individual day, your individual enjoyments throughout the day, so that you're not thinking all the time about like, oh my God, was that good for the group or bad for the group? Because, ultimately that's your ultimate goal, right? Every day of your life, if you're this caveman in a caravan in the middle of in the wild, or like, there's a bunch of, I imagine orange plains. I don't know, Acme orange plains. Imagine you're walking with a group and your brain is wandering, but you need to be able to enjoy yourself and enjoy life and be yourself while also not worrying about conflicting with your overall goal every day. And your overall goal every day, if you live in that culture, is to be somewhat, at least, favorable in the popularity spectrum. You want to be favored by people socially. You want to be favored socially, so that when the group moves, you move along with them. They don't want to ignore you, and they look after you. They want to keep you around. So ultimately your goal is for people to like you. So you learn manner systems within villages so that you could easier communicate certain basic ideas to each other, basic feelings of cohesion. Simple things like bowing, opening doors for each other, similar culture, things like that. Why do you do them? Do they mean anything? Or do they imply that you will cohese with the group? That you will be a good glue with the group? Do they imply that you will just be good with the group? You don't really know. You just do them because they imply that they'll be good for this overall idea, this overall goal that you have of being with a group. That's your overall goal, is being with a group. So you do all these things religiously because they make you look upon with good favor upon publicly. When people look at you publicly. You open a door. You do something. You pay the bill for the girl, or the woman, raises the tone or raises the pitch of her voice when she's speaking to someone she likes or something. Whether that be kinesthetically motivated, like something internal and visceral, whether that's motivated by something internal and visceral, or whether that's motivated by something out there, some idea of some specter of idea that you want to fit in with everybody, is the religion. You act religiously there because you have this idea, that this overarching goal of, I want to be together with everybody. Especially as a child, that's like what you want to do. You want to fit in with the people around you. So you're going to do things that make you fit in. And as a parent, one of your jobs as a parent is to make sure that your child is most socially acceptable, so that they can participate in rituals like that, which show cohesion with the group, because that is the founding religion that babies are operating on, children are operating on, toddlers are operating on. You want to stay with the group. You want to act religiously in ways that will be best for you. And as a child, the best thing for you is to be agreeable with the group, whether that be with other kids, with other parents that are watching you, so that you can learn lessons from them and you can learn around the world and learn from the culture, and then be socially acceptable so you can learn more lessons. That social acceptability. That social acceptability. Because, like, what happens when you are able to actually integrate with people properly at a young age is that you are able to move up in the world by acting religiously, with aligning your religion to the proper situation. And as a child, the religion is to be best with a group. Then as an adult, you learn to individuate, get your own idea of what your religion is for your individual life. But as a child, your primary religion that you're hardwired to be into is being agreeable with a group. Why might we ever need to not be that way? Why might we not ever need to be partaking in the religion that is the group religion, which is the population religion, the population contest religion? Participate in the social rituals to make sure that you are seen favorably by other people. Maybe not necessarily being true to your inward self, but outwardly expressing in a way that'll have you favorable with the population around you. Popular. Why might you ever need to grow out of that? Why might you never ever need to not be there? At some point, well, we must lead. At some point, there will be some decisions that are better for the group overall. In fact, many of the situations, as we become more able to handle them, many of the situations of life that happen to be better for the entire group are often decisions that aren't immediately popular with the entire group. Oftentimes, solutions that are best for our lives are not the solutions that are most popular. And as we grow older and attach more wisdom into our brain, we're able to see what those look like more and more. Now, as a child, you don't really know what that looks like. So your best chance for survival is to just be agreeable so that you can be taken care of. But when people stop wanting to take care of you, let's say you get too old and too large to be able to be literally carried on people's back, then that paradigm must switch or you will die. If you continue relying on people like that, there will be people who just ignore you eventually. They're just like, you're too old. I did it. Why can't you do it? Right? So eventually the paradigm's got to switch from popularity contest, which is, hey, please take care of me, I'm a child, to individual strength. And this is where religion comes into play. As a child, you think you're not acting religiously because you're simply behaving in ways that are favorable for your life. You're not doing anything religious. You're not thinking about some religious God. You're not thinking about some religious spirit within you. You're just behaving in ways that make you popular with your parents or with your family or with yourself. Things that just make you likable, right? As a baby, as a child. But at first you're eating, at first you're crawling and all that kind of stuff. But as you learn more about yourself, your paradigm towards life, as you learn more about where your role is you are looking for where your role is. So you are more of the group and you are more considerate of your role in the group so that you can stay in the group so that you can continue to get your needs met in the group because you are not able to get your own needs met. And there are still people who are willing to meet your needs for you as a child. But as you get older and you have people who aren't there anymore to meet your needs because they have their own needs to be met because nature is hitting them with that age bidness. And you are now becoming more able to handle it on your own physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually. Your natural inclination to be on autopilot so that you can live your life and so that you can experience in the moment, shifts to something more personal, which is what religion is. It's the same locomotion. It's the same engine. It's the same software that runs for religion, for simply the autopilot as when you were a kid. Humans necessarily live religiously. Their religion just changes as life goes on. They necessarily live according to a certain set of rules, which are more guaranteed than other set of rules to provide them with favorable results that will either lead them to be happier, healthier, enjoy longer, have more better relationships, etc., etc., etc. All that kind of good stuff. All that kind of stuff. That's what we are searching for all the time, is this autopilot, so that we can get all that kind of good stuff. So that the closer that your religion is aligning with your situation, the more you can naturally relax into this autopilot mode and retrieve the bounties and enjoy the bounties of whatever it is that you, whatever situation it is that you're a part of. And you might say, well, Herbie, when you get older, your situation doesn't really change. You're just around the people that you're always around. Maybe not physically on the outside world, but on the meta world, in the metaphysical, your situation completely changes over time. As a child, literally physically small and physically unable, emotionally unable and small, must literally be taken care of, right? These little tiny babies. As a baby, you must be taken care of. So physically, you're around the same people, possibly. Possibly. But as you get older, your body is able to take care of more of itself. You're still around the same people, but your body is now in a different situation. You are able to take more of you're able to take care of more of your own facilities. And more is expected of you because of that. As you become possibly a preteen or a teenager, more is expected of you. Simply because you are able to do more, you've experienced more, you've given as much joy just by being alive. You know, that baby smile and baby laugh, etc., or whatever you've done for other people, whether you know it or not. What's expected you is different. Your metaphysical, your physical, your physical relationship with the things around you might not have changed, but your metaphysical, your relationship with these things around you certainly changes as you get older. And so when you individuate as you become an adult, your relationship with the world becomes one such that you are one that is operating for yourself, on yourself, within the world, within the entire scope of the world, which is composed of other people who are also doing their own one with their own individual dance with themselves. Unless they're a child in which their relationship with the world is one such that the world takes care of you, as opposed to the adult relationship with the world, necessarily biologically, right? Your relationship with the world scientifically becomes one which is that I have a relationship with myself in the world. I am living, I am one being individual within the world, as opposed to I am a child and the world takes care of me. It is reversed. It is inside out, which is I am myself inside the world. I am one part of the world, as opposed to the baby, which is like the world takes care of me. It gravitates towards me, whereas when you're an adult, it's the world exists and boop, I'm there within this entire world, this entire universe, and there's me, there's us, right? So that's the childlike view versus the adult view. And they necessarily change just due to what emotionally and physically is nature telling you to do at that time. We act religiously, no matter what. We always want that autopilot. We're always looking for the autopilot. No one wants to spend no one wants to spend minutes, hours, a day devoted specifically to thinking about whether or not all your choices were the right choices towards your ultimate goal. And what is your ultimate goal exactly? For most religions, the ultimate goal is the ultimate paradise, quote unquote, because the idea of an eternal life is completely blows this idea of our life out of the water. Eternal life compared to 70 to 80 years if you're lucky here, right? Eternal life, 70 to 80 years. Eternal life, 50 to 70 years. Eternal life, or 23 to 27 years. Eternal life, or if you're lucky, 100 years, or whatever. So most religion, these days especially, focuses on this eternal life. Eternal life. Because it just, I mean, the length of this life just pales in comparison to an eternal life. So there's just a lot of focus on that. So they act religiously in ways where they're not thinking individually every day, like, okay, so did I do this right? Was that the right move? Was that the right move? Was that the correct move? Oh, man, because I have this ultimate goal, right? Like, of like, what even is my ultimate goal? If you don't have a religion, what even is the ultimate goal? But if you have, let's say, a religion and you're like, oh, my ultimate goal, man, is like freaking eternal life. Well, there's this thing that they passed down for like thousands of years where they're like, okay, these things allegedly, apparently, after all these souls were thrown into were sacrificed, after enough souls were sacrificed, allegedly, we found out that these specific rules made it so that you have a higher chance of getting into this like eternal life, which is so much more, which is quote unquote, so much more significant, right? Than this current one. So that's their ultimate goal. So that's their ultimate goal. They're like, um, they're like always orienting towards that because to them, that is an ultimate goal, which gives them a sense of purpose every day so they can evaluate every day and not freaking pull their out thinking every day, wondering, oh, shoot, am I doing something proper with this life when that anxiety hits at night and you're like, do. What you up to? Are you up? Have you thought about all the failures you had in your life? Have you thought about the times that it was super awkward at that one time when you were a child at the birthday party at school where nobody clapped and your hat was on the wrong side of your head or something like that? And so when those times at night start pounding or knocking at your head and you start wondering about what you're doing, whether you should even be sleeping right now, or should you be up and working on something? What should you be doing? What should you do? What should you do? What should you do? As a child, it's always oriented towards something, right? I should be agreeable. My parents should like me. Why? Because my parents are responsible for taking care of me. As you get older and your parents are unable to be there all the time to take care of you for whatever reason, maybe mortality strikes for whatever reason. As you get older, the paradigm has to shift from thinking that, okay, I got to be agreeable because the people who are going to take care of me are my mom and dad. So I got to be agreeable and likable to them and do what they want and not put up too much of conflict with them and prioritize being nice because the paradigm is that the people who are going to take care of me are these parental folks. So I got to be nice to them. I got to be kind. I got to do this, that, do that because literally my existence depends on them. So, I mean, it's just logical to play it that way. As you see that the rules are that way, it's simply logical to play it to the best of your ability. So you are going to be as kind and agreeable to what your parents believe is possible if that is your paradigm, if your paradigm is that they're taking care of you. However, even in their paradigm, just what exists biologically within the human development cycle, even in their mental paradigm, they do not expect themselves to take care of an adult. So whether or not your paradigm is that way, their paradigm is starting to clash. Whether or not you feel like you have some kind of emotional love for each other or not, and of course you do. But even that is going to clash because internally, as the human development life cycle tells us, we individuate and take care of ourselves as we get older. So we naturally are inclined to know that you don't take care of another individual. And so your paradigm shifts as you get older. So that every day at night, you're not thinking about, oh, shoot, did I do the right thing? As a child, you're like, okay, did I do the right thing? Did I get the right grades? Did I clean my room? Did I speak to my mom properly? Did I do this? Did I do that? And hopefully your parents are setting you up with proper rituals that are aligned with the public sphere so that when you go onto the public sphere, you're not left without a paddle. Did I say goodnight to my brother? Did I say sorry to my brother? Did I hug my sister? Did I call my sister? Did I talk to my grandma? Did I do the dishes? Did I mow the lawn? You do all these things so that you're socially acceptable, whether that be with your family or your friends. Why are you learning all these things as a child? Because I want to learn physics. No, children are into being around the group. And so hopefully, in an ideal situation, the parents put into them the proper ideas and expect of them the proper rituals because the kids are just going to follow, right? In an ideal situation, the parents set them up into the game that is similar to the game that the real world is playing so that they're ready to be into the real world and engage with the real world when they're of that age. So children are acting religiously in that way at first. You might say, well, it has no God, Herbie. That has no sky God. It does have a God. That God is their parents. It is the people who are taking care of them. That is their God. In other words, a human being is their God. Uh-oh, boom, that's an issue. But they do have a God. They're acting religiously. The God is just the parents. As in the person providing them with either the retribution or the rewards for playing the game and even setting the rules. That person is the God. And that person, at first as a child, is a person, but it's their God. It's their mom, usually. Their mom is usually their God. They follow the rules of this God. They get the food. They follow the rules of the God. They get good sleep. They follow the rules of the God. They get to play the video game. They follow the rules of the God. They're acting religiously. So that's as we're seeing is that there's not really a debate of religion of does it exist, and rather what is the religion? What way? What by what motive and by what moral code and by what system of thinking is this person choosing to autopilot on? Because nobody is thinking every single day about their entire life, but we have to. You have to think about, are you orienting towards a better life because you will want that for yourself, because you know from your own self that there are moments in the past where you could have avoided unnecessary suffering if you were properly oriented towards the right ideas. So you're constantly looking for that right idea so that you can autopilot, so that you're not stressed out, so that you can use that human energy and that human ability to be more precise and direct towards your goal. And the way you do that is by having faith that the goal that you're working on is going to pay off in the end. Because if you don't believe that, you're not going to put all of your human strength and going as hard and as fast towards that thing. So what is that thing? Boom, that's the religion. It's just the design thing. Just because nobody can work on autopilot. The human and most animals work best with a goal. Point A to point B, conflict resolution, problem solution, question answer. So we're looking for a way, humans as a whole have always been looking for a way to simplify what that question is. Simplify what that question is so you can live on autopilot every day and just trust that what you're doing is the best that you could possibly be doing ever. You know, so you're just like, oh, didn't waste anything, and no matter what happens, happens. So you could live without fear, right? Because what is fear other than the idea of maybe you're not doing the right thing? Because if you're doing the right thing, whatever happens, happens, right? It's like you can't control the entire universe. If a freaking plane crashes on you and you just like boom, like was that your fault? So no. So do you fear that? No. You're fearing like if it's your fault. So you're just fearing if you're not playing the right game, right? We're always playing a game. You're always going to be religious. You're always going to be because you can't trust that what you see in front of you is always what's just there, right? If you're just in your room, does the outside world not exist anymore? It does. So how do you interact with it without always looking at it and have the idea that you're going to be okay and do better in this world by interacting with it? Well, you have to construct an idea about it so that you can operate within it without actually like always confronting it. And that's what religion, that's what ends up being this idea that we call religion. Might as well be called a stencil as you're just following it. You just construct it and then you follow it so that you don't have to think and reevaluate and reassess every day, but rather you can just focus on the day and get your entire output. Get as much of your human output as possible into this thing, your potential. Actuate that potential, right? Braindead simple is God stuff because it's not really like a quote unquote religious thing. It's more of a design thing. So what we need to look at more is really just like what is the design that you're adhering to? What is the design that you're adhering to? Well, what you first need to know is that you don't actually have as much free will as you might think at first. There's still plenty to go wrong. We both know that. We all know that. There's still plenty to go wrong. But as you're just autopiloting towards one religion, towards one set of beliefs that you trust will get you benefits in the future, as you participate in that set of beliefs, aren't you letting go a little bit? Aren't you autopiloting? Because you are just going to the best of your ability to this religious code thing. We already know that. We already know that day to day you would orient towards something that you are aligning towards a better life for you and yourself. For you and yourself, or whatever it is that you care about, you're aligning towards this higher goal. And how do we know that? Because every day you have to reevaluate and reassess. Because of this expiration date that you necessarily have, blah, 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 and the fact that every day you make new decisions, you necessarily are trying to go towards a one that you believe will get you a better life. Otherwise, you concern yourself with it. This stuff becomes like a pinball machine in your life where it's boom, boom, just orienting you towards the goal. Boom, 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 boom. And so everybody is just trying to do better in their game, and their game might just not be the game that you're adjusted to, or maybe one that we're all on the same page about. But we all have this inner goal because we're not all aware of the same things at the same time. It's impossible. So we have this inner goal that we're aligning to, and we operate from that because we're in the dark. And so we operate on some kind of faith whenever that faith seems to line up with the truth and it seems to be safe. We're going to be following that. We're just operating in the dark in the sense that when you even speak to a friend or speak to yourself, quote unquote, how do you know that what your actions are doing are actions that will get you more towards this idea of relief and peace and this idea of reducing your suffering? How do you know that it's going to reduce your suffering in the long run? Because we know that humans are suffering, right? All the time. Life is suffering. When you come out the womb, babies start off crying. Life is suffering. Literally, life is suffering. right? When that's like one of the ways that they even know that a baby is alive when it comes out crying. That's one of the ways that they indicate that it's healthy. We already come into this world suffering. And we use suffering more as a way to orient ourselves, a way to see what not to do. Because in a vast, expansive world where we're so tiny and the world is so infinite, there is like infinite things to do. What's more beneficial is telling us what not to do so that we can stay in this body as long as possible, so we can continue enjoying the world, enjoying the universe. So, what not to do actually becomes something more useful. And so life is that. Life becomes this thing, this suffering thing, guiding to you towards less suffering. What guides you? Well, whatever guides your body to less suffering, whatever guides your body to a less feeling of suffering, dissatisfaction, a visceral thing, a feeling of internal suffering. How do you know it's there? Well, it's there. Well, how do you know you're at peace? Well, it's not there. An on or off switch, a binary. Are you suffering or are you not suffering? You ever notice how like your stomach, you don't feel that until it starts hurting, right? So to what function is suffering? Just a quick side note, to what function is suffering? Maybe to alert you. It becomes your friend, alerting you that there's an issue so that you can take care of it before it does you in. Hey, stop drinking so much soda. Why? Your stomach's hurting, it's gonna rupture. But does your stomach feel anything when it's feeling okay? No. It's just the presence of that suffering, which is so good for us. It's so what a beautiful system, so that you can just simply know to now pay more attention to it. And the feeling of when it's okay, it's like a piece. It just melts back in, right? Reducing suffering, reduces suffering. That is, not only are we familiar with it, it's our internal body, it's our internal language with ourselves, our body's way of learning about itself, its current condition, its state, fight or flight modes among one of those states. Beyond that, other things like sad, confused, hungry, other different internal states. And these are all states that are away from neutral, right? Suffering, hungry, confused, even happy, right? Happy is apart from peace. It's different. It's different from neutral. Some kind of discomfort. It can be discomforting to be too happy sometimes, right? That's a form of suffering. So, same way that we're doing with the idea of with religion, it's not so much that it's not even so much that we're discussing what to do with religion or whether it exists, or maybe, or rather, that's exactly what we're saying, is that the religion idea precedes your choice or preference towards any. And with that same idea, the suffering itself precedes any emotion that we feel about, any relationship that we have with this suffering. It just is. Your body gets uncomfortable. We attach different words to it over time as we learn more about ourselves. And as we will continue learning more about ourselves, we attach different words to it. But the suffering precedes any of our descriptions of it, right? The suffering in our body. When the baby cries, when it comes out the womb, it's already suffering. It has no concept of the words to describe suffering, but is already suffering. So what is religion if not a system of principles and rules that we follow, that we trust to reduce our unnecessary suffering in the world, our own unnecessary suffering? So as a child, it's being agreeable. But as your body flowers into something amazing and beautiful as you get older. And you are able to taste more fruits of life just by sheer wisdom of having, just by sheer virtue of having words to enjoy more of the zest of life, to understand more about music, to understand more about history, to understand more about yourself, to understand more about art, to understand more about people. You need to be older to understand the language so that you can suck more of that nectar of life. But the cost is a little higher because now you are responsible for more. You're responsible for your own life. So yeah, you can go watch that fireworks show, but you want to watch that nice fireworks show and be around the right people and be alive long enough to be able to understand the beauty and majesty of fireworks themselves. Okay, well, you just got to be a little bit older. You got to take care of yourself a little bit more. You have to get a job. You have to, conduct yourself in society properly so that you can do all those things. And you can trust that you can do all those things so that you're not fretting about it. And so your idea, your paradigm of what's going to get you that, and what's going to reduce your suffering might be that, like, you're worried that you won't get that, right? That, like, you might be worried that, like, you might not get rid of the fireworks, or that, like, you can't do that stuff. That might be a form of suffering, right? So you're trying to reduce that unnecessary suffering. So you attach yourself to an idea that has been proven to formidably get you to situations like that. And you might say, oh, okay, like being popular. And I might say, yeah, like, as in culture, as in your religion might be culture, as in culture, as in long form for the word cult, as in humans are always godly. Humans are always behaving religiously in the same way that humans are always suffering. Whether or not you have a relationship with it, whether or not that relationship with it is something that's aligned in the same way that someone else's relationship with this suffering or their God is, but it's more of a design thing, right? For the human beings. How else are you going to operate in this gigantic world without some kind of preordained set of rules for yourself so that you don't have to think about it every single day of, like, okay, how do I operate in this world again? And this suffering that we have that we're always trying to avoid, right? So the suffering and this idea of wanting to operate on these religious set of principles so that you can have a better life. Well, what is a better life if not less suffering, right? Like, those things precede the idea of religion and the idea of what should I do, of all these kind of things. You basically just have your body and discomfort. And so every day your body wants to get more and more rid of that discomfort and chase more of the pleasures. So how do you do that? Well, you got to look at the entire world every day, or you can look at the entire world methodically and create a set of rules so that you can play to your highest potential as a human being in those sets of rules so that you can get more of this world and not continuously get more jealous as it slips further and further away from your fingertips. We act religiously to be able to enact more on life, to be able to love and suck more out of life, to be able to be protected in ourselves. We act religiously. It's simply what we do as human beings. It's more of just a mode that we're always in, and that we can adjust to different ideas to test out new ideas. But it's a mode that you're in that your human self has to operate on because it's limited. It has to operate on the limited space that it's in. So you have to abide by certain rules to ensure that you'll get what you want. And what you want might be popularity. It might be favor by your friends. And that makes sense because they're your friends. So you want to be favored by your friends, don't you? So there's nothing wrong with that inherently. But the closer you get to the rules of actual life, the more bounty you will receive, just like in any game. The more, if you want to score the most points while you're playing basketball, you play the rules of basketball and unleash your human potential within those rules. Why? Because if you end up doing things like trying to play out of court, You might be able to dribble the ball physically out of court. You might be able to do that, but because the rules of the game necessitate that you must be in there to end up making points. So if you want points in basketball, which is the game that you are playing, then you must be playing in the rules. It doesn't matter if your human potential can have you throw the basketball outside the court, hit the wall, land into the hoop. It's not a legal move, so you won't get the points that you want, and you want to getting those points because the only way that you're being measured is by this basketball game that you're playing. So that's basically all that religion is. Just what game are you playing, right? What game are you playing? Are you playing the popularity game? Are you playing the individual God game? Which God game are you playing? Etc. Etc. But just as designed, because people aren't thinking about every day of their life like that, right? We choose what our religion is. Some religions have a god. Some religions' gods are human beings. Some religions' gods are their moms when you're a little child. Some religions are the culture. So whatever the culture wants is a god. So the god is the culture. So whomever might be at the top, whomever is the most human popularity, which makes sense because if everybody's playing the popularity contest, well, you would look up to the person who has it, who seems to have it made, right? And you're going to try to follow them and try to be like they are so that you can be like that. This God thing, you know, wherever you place your values in is your God. Whatever you view as ideal is your God. So by usual in the West right now, the typical God is culture. Because what do you value? In a world without God, right? In the West, in the world without God, what is the real God? Because what do we search for in this God thing, in this religion God thing, right? Is to reduce our suffering. This universal truth for human beings that you come out of the womb suffering, that life is suffering. So this God thing is something you follow. This religion thing is something that you participate in that will reduce your unnecessary suffering as time goes on. You can trust that. And so what is reducing your unnecessary suffering to the most possible ability? Was it not an orgasm? Is it not a physical thing like that? What other human physical thing do we place on such a high as an orgasm? And what is an orgasm if not the ultimate releasing of suffering, the ultimate dealing of suffering? And then you freaking go to sleep afterwards? Pretty good deal. So we see sex as this ultimate suffer reducer that every human actually has access to, whether through sex or masturbation. We all have access to it, whether through sex or masturbation, this feeling of sex. The best feeling that we have, apparently, right? Sells music, sells everything, sells video games, sells movies, sells books. Sex sells, as they say. The ultimate sufferer reducer. Masturbation, sex, an orgasm. Our relatable stress reducer across the globe, across nation. Every human, we can confirm, loves the orgasm. So, because we are these religious creatures, until something feels better than the orgasm, you will view the orgasm religiously. as in it's your God. So now the question is no longer what do I make God? Because God is going to be this thing that reduces stress, right? The God is going to be this thing that you follow to reduce the suffering in your life consistently. Consistently reduce the suffering in your life for you. This God thing. So, what is it for most people? Sex and masturbation. Because until something feels better than that, that's what it will be. You're only on earth for so long, you need a stress reducer. You're looking for a stress reducer. The opioid epidemic, the weed epidemic, porno epidemic, it's not a difficult question to see. You're looking for something to reduce the stress. What is this stress coming from? I mean, not from the impending doom that is approaching everybody, right? It couldn't be that. So we're all looking for a stress reducer, right? So until something feels better than sex or masturbation, sex and masturbation will be the God. Does that fit into the culture view? Well, sure it does. What is going to get you sex in the way that you want? Popularity. Sex is the God, culture is the religion. Sex is the God, culture becomes the religion. Why? Because who is going to have sex with you if you're not part of the culture? If you're a woman or a man and your God is sex, you will idolize religion because, or you will idolize the culture because the culture is your fastest ticket towards having at least most supply of this God thing for you. For you, God is sex. God is real. It's just different for different people, right? And we're all, or well, the idea is that we're searching for the one that is closest to reality so that we can let go the most. Currently, for most people, they choose God to be sex, as they choose their idea of God is sex. The feeling of an orgasm, masturbation, jacking it. Because it's the biggest stress reducer. And as we know, the nature of life is that it's stressful, right, from the get-go. So what we're trying to do for ourselves is reduce unnecessary amounts of stress as much as possible. And what is our most consistent, reliable form of that costs no money to most people? We're not being too nitpicky. Sex and masturbation. So the nature of life, reduce that stress. You have this consistent stress reducer that becomes God. Not really. There's not really a question of, does God exist? God is real because you are real. God exists because you want it to exist. Not like you want it to. I'm saying like your design wants it to, in the same way that gravity wants to pull you down towards the earth. You want a God. You're looking for that because life itself is too stressful to handle without it. Imagine if you didn't have the idea of sex or masturbation and God. You just had nothing. You're just like, you had no reliable way that you were ever going to deal with this moment, that you were ever going to feel like in a moment of like, oh wow, this is all worth it. Imagine like you never felt like you were ever going to get that breath of fresh air. For most people, that's sex, right? But imagine you had no religion and no sex. Like you just had no hope of that, right? Like not even jacking it, right? Like you had no hope of that towards that feeling. It's like, and by what measure are you able to measure like the ultimate pleasures of life versus the suffering that you're daily dealing? You bury yourself in all that suffering, which leads to a life of hedonism because you're just like, well, I'm not going to deal with all this suffering. I'm just going to seek pleasure all day because me dealing with this suffering isn't even going to reliably make the suffering better. So I have one life to live. I'm not going to waste it. I might as well just get as high as I can. So we're looking for this God thing because we're looking for a way to deal with the everyday stresses. So we're looking for a consistent stress reducer, consistent something that will help us overcome consistently. And for most people, that becomes sex. Why? Because it's consistent and accessible, reliable. So it's got to feel good. Immediately, this God thing. Why? Because we're dealing with this suffering every day. And so sex and masturbation is going to easily become your God. So culture becomes your God. And what we end up seeing right now is an entire wave of folks. You can't even tell what they're really thinking because their paradigm is still operating off of the idea that sex is of the highest priority. And why would it be of the highest priority? Because our most basic nature is that life is suffering. So people are going to God eyes, because life is suffering itself, people will make the most consistent reducer of that stress into their God. So as long as they follow that thing, they can reduce their stress in life as much as possible. Culture becomes that. Culture gives you everything, right? In a lot of ways, they allow to, culture gives you everything. It gives you you get attention, you get food from people, you get to laugh at the same kind of jokes, so you don't have to deal with social awkwardness. You have a higher chance at procuring a mate because you will be just around more people. And ultimately, because you're looking for a stress reducer, unless you believe on a whim that your children will give you it, ultimately you're looking for that sex, right? That mate, because you're looking to reduce your stress in life. Most people are looking to reduce their stress in life. Most people aren't looking to become gigantic, high-powered CEOs, which for those people, the reason why they're able to do that is because it is such a high suffering for them to not be in that position. But most people are just trying to reduce the suffering in their life. And sex takes form of that. Sex is the best form of that for most people. It's accessible and it's consistent. If there's no one around, I could still have access to it. Is that not God? The problem with making sex God, the problem with making physical pleasures God and sex God, is that it's not even that tight, Not that tight. Nah, it's more just the reason why it is God is just because it feels the best. Can you even blame anybody? People are just trying to reduce their suffering. So what's it to you that they want to use sex to reduce it? How do you know what they're going to see? What the thing is that this relationship with God, as in what we have defined to be God over all these years. And how did we define it? Well, over the course of lives and people spending their lives thinking about it and throwing it away and devoting their lives to thinking about this, about what game is best played to be best on autopilot and to enjoy this life of yours. And so over time, we develop this God because over time, the truth has reasserted itself over dominion, over civilizations, that certain ideas lead to better reductions of suffering, more sustainable reductions of suffering. And so who chose God? Who chose the word to be God? People over the course of time. And why should we use it? Because it communicates the idea, because we only have so much time on Earth. So it's we're all communicating this basic idea. Now, maybe we took a misstep by applying this God idea to this thing out there and not something within us, not something that we have a relationship with, that we define for ourselves so that we can do best for ourselves in the world and be best on autopilot and really suck the potential out of ourselves or boost our potential. Maybe we made a mistake by considering God to be this thing that is watching over us and not simply one of the slots in our design that we are following whether we like it or not. Maybe we made a mistake to not define it as simply a slot in our mentality, in our hearts, that we choose to place the contents in there, but run our entire body like an engine. Maybe we made a mistake by not defining God like that Maybe you made a mistake by not defining God as this internal engine that you follow whether you know it or not. Maybe we made a mistake as a society to not tell people to just define what God is as close as they can to reality so that they can enjoy it as best as possible, so that they can relax and really see the majesty of life. Because when you are seeing the rules of the game, of soccer or basketball or football, or when you're learning the rules of chess, or after you've learned the rules of Zelda, watching the game invites you into a different kind of enjoyment, a more enriched kind of enjoyment, because you know the rules, you know what to pay attention to. So you open yourself up to being able to reap in and just collect all this rich information about human beings and really just bathe in the magic and bathe in the wonder and and greatness of what human beings can do, of what we know human beings are capable of from the inside. Just just totally dumping their spirit into something. We know that humans are capable of amazing things. We love an underdog story. We love seeing that deep inner spirit coming out. What is that deep inner spirit? That potential of human beings. That potential, that God. Now, what do we mean by that God? By that amazing human spirit, only accessible by them trusting in a system so much that they can put all of their faith and all their humanity into this goal and shoot like an arrow into their goal. They're guided by God. What is this God thing? These rules in their head that will allow them access to this favorable result that they're looking for. This higher arching rule. Not this God in the sky, not some floating man in the sky, this bearded man in the sky. Just what rules are they playing? To what do they ascribe by that happens to be so aligned with the current situation that they can just dump their entire human spirit into this moment and really extract their entire potential and use it in this moment for greatness or whatever it is. This God thing already exists within us. This playbook, this rule, this game that we're already following, because we necessarily can't think about every moment at all the times. Or if you did, you'd just be sitting there being a potato all day. You wouldn't get anything done. This God thing already existing within you. It's more of a property, if anything, of human beings. It's just what is your God? You already behave in such a way. The culture, how do you know? How do you know that what you're doing in the culture is going to get you what you want? And what do you want? You want to reduce your suffering. Well, if your religion is the culture, what will reduce your suffering is going to be being around the culture. And why would your religion be the culture? Well, if your best stress reducer was sex. But are you placing your weighted body down the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all the times? We already behave as though God exists. God is real. God is real because we are real. God is as real as us. The way we behave is to appease God. What we appoint as our God might be different, but our reasoning for God is the same, always. We're looking to reduce our suffering reliably every day, consistently every day. What does that for us is going to be God. So if getting on your knees doesn't work, if praying to the Christian God doesn't work for you, if it doesn't feel better, if it doesn't reduce stress reliably more than sex, it's not your God. Won't be your God. If your relationship with your Hinduism, if your relationship with your Muslim, help me out, guys, your Muslim dude, if your relationship with that doesn't feel consistently reliable to reduce suffering to whatever amount of suffering you can tolerate, then it's not your God. You're not going to make it your God. You're going to make sex your God. Whatever relationship, whatever religion we have, moving forward as a society, if our human relationship with that does not feel better than sex, if it does not reduce stress reliably better than sex within our tolerance for stress as a society, as a race, we will make sex our God. That's just how it is. Because God is real, yo. God is freaking real, yo. Take heart. God is real and always has been because it's from within. It's always been from within. We've always been looking for ways to define it, but it's always been from within. It's what we operate off of. That's what God is. God is us. God actually is us because we are God. We follow God because we're trying to reduce our stress in life, unnecessary suffering. And what better way to do that than with God? See, they got me saying it. What better way to do that with God? Not even like that. What better way to... God is already there. It's already there within you, within your soul. Within your soul. It is your... You just decide. You just decide what your compass is. Maybe that's all the free will you have, is just deciding what is your God. If God's real. Because you're real. And your suffering is real. If your suffering's not real, then God's not real. You know? This has been Pao Go On. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Herbie. Pao Go On. Monday, June 14, 2021. Is your suffering real? Yes, then God is real. See you next time, guys. Love you guys.